Hi everyone, and welcome to Horror Spectator. If you're new here, consider subscribing. We dive deep into the darkest, most chilling real-life horror stories out there. And if you're a returning viewer, I'm so glad to have you back, friend. In this video, we're diving into 5 brand new stories from park rangers and wilderness guides who've experienced things that shouldn't exist. What should have been routine workdays turned into some of the worst moments of their lives. From mysterious stalkers who've been watching for years, to creatures lurking in remote creeks, and even phenomena that defy the laws of time itself, this video has a little bit of everything. These are all stories I really enjoyed reading, and I genuinely hope you find them just as gripping as I did. The last one especially stuck with me. It's about someone who's still dealing with the aftermath of what happened, so if you have any thoughts or advice, drop them in the comments. As always, thank you so much for being here and supporting the channel. It means the world. Now, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's head into the wilderness. And remember, viewer discretion is advised. I've worked at Redwood State Forest for 8 years now, leading nature tours and managing trail safety. Most days blend together in a pleasant rhythm of pointing out wildlife and answering questions about local flora. But there's one visitor who's disrupted that rhythm in ways I'm still trying to understand. He first appeared during a sunrise photography walk I was leading. While my group of 12 enthusiasts clustered around a particularly photogenic deer, I noticed him standing motionless about 20 feet off the designated path. Everything about him seemed wrong for a wilderness setting. Pressed khaki pants, a collared shirt that looked like it belonged in a 1970s office, and polished leather shoes completely unsuitable for hiking. What struck me most was his stillness. While everyone else moved, adjusted their cameras, whispered excitedly, he simply stood and watched. Not the deer, us. I approached him with my standard friendly greeting, asking if he needed directions back to the trail. He didn't respond immediately, just continued staring through thick-rimmed glasses that magnified his unblinking eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice had a mechanical quality that made my skin crawl. "I'm recording behavioral patterns." Before I could ask what he meant, he turned and walked away with surprising speed for someone in dress shoes. Over the following months, I encountered him repeatedly, always alone, always in similar outdated clothing, always carrying the same worn leather notebook. I began asking other staff members about him, and that's when I learned he'd been coming to the forest for over a decade. Nobody knew his name. Everyone called him the Suit. "He's harmless," my supervisor Marcus assured me. "Just some eccentric who likes to observe people. We can't ban someone for being weird." But I couldn't shake my unease. I started documenting my own sightings, noting patterns. He appeared most frequently on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He never brought food or water. He never used the bathroom facilities. He just observed. The situation escalated on a humid afternoon in July. I was conducting a routine inspection of our staff parking area when I found him crouched beside vehicles, photographing license plates with an expensive-looking camera. His notebook lay open on the ground, and from my angle, I could see detailed sketches of our facility layout, including areas marked restricted access. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. He looked up without surprise, as if he'd been expecting me. "Compiling data for the network." "What network?" "The 17 sister sites." He flipped through his notebook, revealing pages filled with names, schedules, and vehicle descriptions. My stomach dropped when I saw my own information, my full name, my work schedule for the past 6 weeks, even my license plate number and the make and model of my car. "How do you know all this?" "Observation." He stood, tucking the notebook under his arm. "Tell me, have you noticed the anomalies, the inconsistencies in the eastern quadrant, the temporal irregularities near the old fire tower?" I had no idea what he was talking about. I radioed security, but by the time Officer Chen arrived, the suit had vanished into the forest with an agility that contradicted his age and appearance. Marcus took my report, but seemed more annoyed than concerned. Look, the guy's been coming here since before I started working here. He's never hurt anyone, he's never damaged property, we can't do anything unless he breaks a law. He's stalking staff members. He's taking notes in a public space. Technically, that's legal. The suit disappeared after that incident. For 7 months, I didn't see him once. I actually started to relax, thinking maybe the confrontation had scared him off. Then he returned. At first, I wasn't sure it was him. This man looked similar, but different. His hair was darker, cut in a different style. His glasses had different frames. Even his posture seemed slightly altered. But the clothing was identical in style, if not exact match, and he carried the same leather notebook. I watched him for several minutes before approaching. When I got close enough to see his face clearly, recognition hit me like ice water. It was him, but somehow not. "Excuse me," I said carefully. "Have we met before?" He studied me with those same unsettling eyes. "Negative. This is my first visit to this location." "You look very familiar." "I have a common appearance." His response was too practiced, too smooth. Since then, he's continued his visits. The notebook has grown thicker. Other staff members have reported similar encounters, the same strange questions about restricted areas, the same unnerving observations. Last week, I found something that's kept me awake at night. While hiking an unmarked trail during my day off, I discovered a small camping setup hidden deep in the woods, well beyond any public access area. Inside a weatherproof box were multiple notebooks identical to the one the suit carries. I opened one. It contained detailed information about every staff member who's worked here in the past 15 years, schedules, habits, family information, home addresses. But what terrified me most were the red check marks next to 3 names, all employees who'd quit suddenly and left town without explanation. My name had a question mark beside it. I reported the campsite to Marcus. When we returned with park rangers 2 days later, everything was gone. No tent, no box, no evidence anyone had ever been there. Marcus pulled me aside afterward. "Drop this," he said quietly. "Trust me, just drop it." "What do you know?" He looked around nervously. "Some things are above my pay grade, and yours. The people who own this forest, they're not who you think they are." I still work here. I still lead tours, but now I count my group members obsessively. I document everything, and when I see a figure in outdated clothing standing motionless among the trees, I pretend not to notice. Because I'm starting to suspect Marcus is right, and whatever the suit is really documenting, I don't want to be the one who finds out.
The old-timers at the ranger station had a saying, "Never go to Blackwater Creek alone." I thought it was just the usual campfire nonsense until I learned the hard way that some warnings are written in blood. I'm Sarah Chen, and I've been a wilderness ranger for 6 years. Blackwater Creek runs through the northern section of our territory, a remote, heavily forested area that sees maybe a dozen hikers per season. The creek itself is beautiful, cutting through ancient rock formations and creating dozens of small waterfalls. It's also where we've had 7 disappearances in the last 15 years. The official explanation is always the same: wilderness misadventure, probable drowning, body not recovered due to difficult terrain and fast-moving water. But rangers talk among ourselves. We share stories the public never hears, and the stories about Blackwater Creek all share disturbing similarities. My introduction to the truth came last September during an emergency evacuation. A massive storm system was approaching, and I was assigned to clear out the backcountry campsites in the northern sector. Standard procedure, something I'd done dozens of times. The last site on my list was near Blackwater Creek, about 6 miles from the nearest road. I reached it around 4 in the afternoon with dark clouds already rolling in. The scene I found made me immediately radio for backup. The campsite looked like a war zone. The tent was shredded, not just collapsed, shredded, with long tears that went through multiple layers of heavy-duty fabric. A sleeping bag lay partially submerged in the creek, still in its stuff sack. A backpack hung from a tree branch 15 feet up, its contents scattered on the ground below. But no blood, no obvious signs of an animal attack, just the overwhelming sense that something had gone terribly wrong. Base, this is Ranger Chen. I've got an abandoned campsite at location Bravo 7. Looks like a possible emergency situation, requesting immediate search and rescue. Static crackled through my radio. Copy that, Chen. However, the storm's moving faster than predicted. You need to evacuate immediately. We'll send a team at first light. But someone might be injured. That's an order, Sarah. That trail's going to be impassable in an hour. Get out now. I didn't want to leave, but I'd seen what flash flooding could do in these canyons. I started back, taking the creek trail because it was the fastest route to safety. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. The first sign was the splashing. I initially dismissed it as normal water sounds. The creek was running high with pre-storm runoff. But as I walked, I became aware of a rhythm to the splashing that matched my pace. When I stopped to adjust my pack, the splashing stopped. When I started walking again, it resumed. I told myself it was an animal, a deer following the same trail, a bear fishing in the creek, nothing to worry about. Then I saw it moving in my peripheral vision. The light was fading fast, but I caught glimpses of something large pacing me from the creek bed. It moved wrong, not like any animal I'd ever seen. It was roughly human-sized, but traveled on all fours in this jerking, disjointed manner, like a puppet with tangled strings. My training told me to stay calm, make noise to scare off wildlife, and continue moving at a steady pace, but my instincts were screaming at me to run. The trail crossed the creek via a wooden footbridge about a mile from the main trailhead. As I stepped onto the bridge, I made the mistake of looking down. It was directly below me. In that brief moment before my brain shut down from pure terror, I saw something that shouldn't exist. It had a roughly humanoid shape, that limbs that were too long and bent at wrong angles. The skin appeared pale and waterlogged, with dark patches where it seemed to have rotted away. But the face was the worst part, almost human, but stretched and distorted, with eyes that reflected my flashlight beam like an animal's tapetum lucidum. Then it grabbed my ankle. The grip was impossibly strong and cold, not just cold to the touch, but a cold that seemed to radiate up my leg, making the muscles seize and cramp. I fell hard, my backpack slamming into the bridge planks, my radio skittered away. The thing began pulling itself up onto the bridge. I could hear it now, a wet clicking sound, like someone trying to breathe through fluid-filled lungs. I kicked frantically with my free leg and felt my boot connect with something that gave way with a sickening softness. The creature released me with a sound I'll never forget, a high-pitched keening that was neither human nor animal, but something horribly in between. I scrambled backwards, grabbing my hiking pole and swinging it wildly. The metal tip connected with the creature's shoulder area, punching through the waterlogged skin. Dark fluid spurted out, and the thing made that terrible sound again. Lightning flashed, illuminating the bridge in stark white light. In that instant, I saw the creature clearly, and I wished I hadn't. Then the darkness returned, and it was gone. I didn't stop running until I reached the parking area. By then, I was sobbing, my ankle throbbing, and my hiking pole dripping with something that looked like motor oil mixed with pond scum. The official report listed me as suffering from trauma-induced hallucinations following hazardous weather exposure. They confiscated my hiking pole for analysis and gave me 2 weeks paid leave. When I returned and asked about the test results on the substance, I was told the pole had been misplaced during processing. I've since learned that I'm not the first ranger to encounter something in Blackwater Creek. I've found incident reports buried in old filing cabinets, all describing similar experiences, all officially dismissed as misidentifications or stress-related hallucinations. 3 months ago, the Park Service closed the entire Blackwater Creek area.
The official reason is environmental restoration work. No timeline for reopening has been announced. I've requested a transfer to another sector. The request is still pending, because here's what nobody wants to admit. Sometimes the things we put on maps aren't the only things living in the wilderness. And sometimes the old warnings aren't just superstition. They're survival advice.
There's a phenomenon in our park that nobody talks about publicly. We've given it a designation in our internal documentation, temporal displacement event. The brass prefer that term over what we rangers call it among ourselves, the lost hour. I'm James Mitchell, senior trail guide at Pinecrest National Forest. I've been doing this job for 11 years, and I thought I'd seen everything the wilderness could throw at me. Then I spent an October afternoon on the White Bark Loop Trail, and I learned that time itself can be a predator. It started with a pattern I noticed in our incident database. I was helping with safety protocol updates, reviewing 5 years of visitor reports, when I saw the correlations. Over a span of 60 months, we'd received 17 reports of hikers becoming separated from their groups on the White Bark Loop. In every case, the missing person was eventually found at the trailhead, confused and disoriented, claiming they'd been waiting there for hours while their group frantically searched for them. What made it strange was the specificity. All incidents occurred on the same 3/4-mile section of trail. All happened between 3 p.m. and 4:45 p.m. All occurred in October. When I brought this to my supervisor's attention, she gave me a look I couldn't quite read. "Just navigational confusion," she said quickly. "People get turned around easily in that section because the trail splits several times." But the trail didn't split in that section. It was a straightforward path with clear markers. I decided to investigate personally. When October arrived, I volunteered for every White Bark Loop tour I could get. For 3 weeks, I led groups through that trail, hyper-aware of my surroundings, counting and recounting my hikers. Nothing unusual happened until October 23rd. I had a group of 7 that day, 2 couples in their 50s, 2 college students, and a solo hiker named Dennis, who was in his 40s. We'd been having a pleasant hike, discussing the geological history of the area when we entered the zone, my private name for that 3/4-mile section where the disappearances occurred. It was 3:17 p.m. I know because I checked my watch specifically. The trail ran through a particularly dense grove of old-growth pines. The canopy was thick enough to create premature twilight even in mid-afternoon. I was explaining the age of the surrounding trees when I felt it, a subtle change in air pressure, like when your ears pop during elevation changes, but more pronounced. Everyone in the group seemed to feel it too. The college students stopped talking mid-conversation. One of the women rubbed her ears. Dennis, who'd been walking beside me, suddenly looked confused. "Did anyone else feel that?" I asked. Murmurs of agreement from everyone. Then one of the college students, Amy, looked around with growing alarm. "Where's Marcus?" She was asking about the other student, her boyfriend. I did a quick count. 6 people. Someone was missing. We'd been walking single file on a narrow section of trail. Marcus had been right in the middle of our group. There were no side trails, no steep drops, nowhere someone could accidentally wander off to, yet he'd vanished. I immediately initiated our lost hiker protocol, but I had a sinking feeling I knew what had happened. While 2 members of my group retraced our steps 50 yards, I radioed dispatch. "This is Mitchell on the White Bark Loop. I need to report a separated hiker, but I want you to check if anyone's shown up at the trailhead in the last few minutes." There was a pause. "Mitchell, that's an odd request. Your group shouldn't even be near the trailhead for another hour. Just check, please." Another pause, longer this time. "We've got a young man here, early 20s, claims he was part of your group, says his name is Marcus Delgado. He seems very confused about how he got here." Of course he was there. "I'm bringing the rest of the group out. Don't let him leave." The hike back was tense. Amy was crying softly. The others kept asking questions I couldn't answer. When we reached the trailhead 40 minutes later, Marcus was sitting on a bench, looking dazed. He stood when he saw us, relief and confusion warring on his face. "Where have you guys been? I've been waiting for over 2 hours." I checked my watch. 4:23 p.m. We'd entered the zone at 3:17 p.m. Marcus had separated from our group at approximately 3:19 p.m. He'd been missing for just over an hour, but according to his watch, which I asked to see, he'd been at the trailhead at 1:47 p.m. His watch had stopped at that time. The second hand was still moving, but the time didn't advance. Park regulations required detailed incident reports for separated hikers. I started filling one out, documenting everything exactly as it happened, but before I could submit it, my supervisor called me into her office. "I'm taking over this report," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "But I was the lead guide." "James," she looked at me seriously, "how long have you worked here?" 11 years. "And do you like your job?" "Of course." "Then you need to understand that some things are above your pay grade. Some things are above mine, too. This incident will be filed as a medical event, probable brief syncope episode. You will not discuss the temporal aspects with anyone. Are we clear?" "But his watch." "A coincidence. A broken watch. Nothing more." She handed me a revised report to sign. "This is for everyone's protection, including yours." I signed it. What choice did I have? But I couldn't let it go. Over the following weeks, I dug deeper into our historical records. I found references to similar events going back decades. In the 1970s, a group of geologists had reported missing time in that same area. In the 1950s, a forest survey crew documented what they called time skips. Each report had been officially dismissed or buried. I found one document from 1962 that wasn't fully redacted. A researcher from some government agency I'd never heard of had spent a month studying the White Bark Loop. His conclusions were partially visible through the black censorship bars. Evidence suggests localized temporal anomaly, possibly natural phenomenon related to redacted. Recommend continued monitoring. Area should not be closed to the public as this may draw unwanted attention. Disappearances remain within acceptable parameters. Acceptable parameters. Last week, I was leading another October tour through the White Bark Loop. As we approached the zone, I felt that familiar pressure change. This time, I stopped the group. "Everyone needs to hold hands," I said. "No one lets go until I say so." They looked at me like I was crazy, but they complied. We walked through that 3/4-mile section hand in hand, like children on a field trip. No one disappeared. When we reached the other side, one of the hikers asked why I had made them do that. I told her it was a team-building exercise, but I knew the truth. Whatever was happening in that zone, whatever was taking people, it seemed to target isolated individuals. Physical contact with others provided some kind of protection. I've started implementing this buddy system on all my October tours through the White Bark Loop. So far, it's worked. No disappearances in the 3 weeks since I started. My supervisor hasn't commented on my new protocol. She hasn't told me to stop either. I think she knows. I think they all know. And I think they're grateful that someone finally figured out how to keep people safe from something they can't officially acknowledge exists. But October isn't over yet, and there are too many trails in this forest, too many guides who don't know what I know. The lost hour is still hunting, and sooner or later, it's going to find someone who isn't holding hands.
I need to tell you about something that happened last spring that's fundamentally changed how I understand reality. I'm a park ranger named Lisa Washington, and I experienced something on the Skyline Ridge Trail that shouldn't be possible, yet I have photographic evidence that it happened. The incident involved a woman I'll call Jennifer Hart, though that's not her real name for reasons that will become clear. It was a beautiful May morning, and I was leading a guided hike for 9 people. The Skyline Ridge Trail is one of our most popular routes, 7 miles of moderate hiking with spectacular views of the valley below. My group was in good spirits, chatting about wildflowers and taking photos at every scenic overlook. Jennifer stood out because of her clothing, bright turquoise hiking pants and a distinctive orange windbreaker with yellow reflective strips. She was friendly, somewhere in her late 40s, hiking alone but happy to chat with others in the group. About 3 miles in, we reached Whispering Falls, a small but photogenic waterfall where I always schedule a 15-minute rest stop. I did my usual head count as people spread out to take pictures and refill water bottles. 8 people. Someone was missing. I counted again. Definitely 8. Jennifer was gone. I was about to start a search when my radio crackled. It was Kevin, another ranger who was stationed at the main overlook about 1.5 miles ahead on our route. "Hey Lisa, just wanted to let you know one of your hikers already made it to the Vista Point. Woman in turquoise pants and an orange jacket. She said she wanted to get some sunrise photos from up here." I was confused. "Kevin, it's 10:30 a.m. and we're still at Whispering Falls. Are you sure she said she was part of my group?" "Positive. She mentioned you by name, said she'd gotten ahead of the pack." "That's impossible. There's no shortcut, and she was with us 20 minutes ago." Silence on the other end. Then, "Well, she's definitely here. Want me to send her back to you?" "No, we'll continue on. But Kevin, this doesn't make sense." "Agreed. Something weird's going on." I gathered my group, all 8 of them, and we resumed hiking. Everyone seemed puzzled about Jennifer, though I noticed several people checking their own photos as if confirming she'd been with us. It took us about 45 minutes to reach the overlook where Kevin was stationed. As we approached, I saw her, Jennifer, wearing the same distinctive turquoise and orange outfit, standing at the railing and taking photographs of the valley. I approached carefully. "Jennifer, where did you go? How did you get here ahead of us?" She turned, looking genuinely confused. "What do you mean? I've been with the group the whole time." "No, you disappeared at the waterfall. You've been missing for almost an hour." Her confusion deepened. "I don't know what you're talking about. I remember the waterfall, but I didn't leave the group. I've been right here with everyone since we arrived at this overlook." "But we hadn't been at the overlook. We just arrived." Kevin pulled me aside. "Lisa, she got here 40 minutes ago. I saw her come up the trail alone. We talked for a bit. She told me about her hike, about your group. She's been here the whole time." "That's impossible," I repeated, but I was starting to doubt my own memory. We completed the hike without further incident. Jennifer remained with the group. Or did she? I found myself constantly checking to make sure she was there, as if she might vanish at any moment. Back at the visitor center at around 2:30 p.m., I began processing the day's paperwork. I was still thinking about the strange incident when at 2:47 p.m., Jennifer walked through the front door. The same Jennifer. The same turquoise pants, the same orange windbreaker. She approached me with an apologetic expression. "I'm so sorry I fell behind. I stopped to photograph some wildflowers and lost sight of the group. It took me a while to find my way back." I stared at her, speechless. "Jennifer, you've been with us all day. You were with us at the overlook. You came back to the center with the group half an hour ago." She shook her head. "No, I haven't seen you since the waterfall. I've been trying to find the trail back for the last hour." That's when I remembered my camera. I pulled out my digital camera and started scrolling through the day's photos. There, a group shot at Whispering Falls, time-stamped at 9:47 a.m. Jennifer was clearly visible in the back row, slightly out of focus but unmistakable in her turquoise pants and orange jacket. Then a photo I'd taken at the overlook at 11:15 a.m., showing the valley view. In the background, clearly visible, was Jennifer in her distinctive orange outfit. But this was taken while our group was still hiking to the overlook before we'd arrived. Then another group shot at the overlook at 11:30 a.m. Jennifer was in this one too, standing with the others, everyone smiling at the camera. I showed the photos to Jennifer, the Jennifer that just walked in. She went pale. "That's me," she whispered. "That's definitely me. Same clothes, same face, same everything. But I wasn't there. I don't remember any of this." I pulled up the photo timestamp information. The metadata confirmed what I already knew. These photos were taken at different times and locations throughout our hike. Then Jennifer, the Jennifer standing beside me, showed me her own camera. "These aren't my photos," she said, scrolling through her memory card. "I don't recognize any of these places."
The images on her camera showed trail sections we hadn't visited, rock formations that weren't on our route, scenic vistas from angles that shouldn't exist on the Skyline Ridge Trail. And the timestamps were wrong. Her photos showed times that didn't match our hike. Some were before we'd started, others at times when she claimed to be lost and looking for the trail. Park management intervened quickly. Too quickly. Jennifer was escorted to a private office. The rest of my group was given complimentary annual passes and asked to sign liability waivers that included confidentiality clauses. My camera was confiscated for a technical examination. When I got my camera back 3 days later, the photos of Jennifer were corrupted, just random pixels and digital noise where her image should have been. Park IT claimed it was a memory card malfunction, but every other photo from that day was perfectly fine. Only the images containing Jennifer were destroyed. I never saw Jennifer Hart again. I tried to contact her using the information from her visitor registration, but the phone number was disconnected and the address didn't exist. But here's what's kept me awake for the past 5 months. I still receive visitor feedback surveys from people who say they were on my tours I have no memory of conducting. The surveys reference conversations I never had and places I didn't visit. Several include photos of me leading these phantom hikes. And sometimes, in the backgrounds of these photos, I can see a woman in turquoise pants and an orange windbreaker. Last week, I was leading a different group on a different trail when one of the hikers approached me at our lunch break. "Have we met before?" she asked. "You look really familiar." I told her I didn't think so. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. It was me, standing at a location I'd never been to, with a group of people I'd never seen before. The photo was dated 3 weeks ago, a day when I'd actually been homesick with the flu. "You led my sister's hiking group last month," the woman said. "She said you were great, very knowledgeable." I don't know what's happening. I don't know if it's happening to other rangers. I don't know if Jennifer Hart ever really existed or if she was always a symptom of something larger. What I do know is this. Sometimes when I'm alone in the visitor center late at night, I see someone standing outside the windows, a figure in turquoise pants and an orange windbreaker, watching, waiting, or maybe warning. I think there might be more than one of me out there now. More than one Lisa Washington, leading hikes, having conversations, living moments I'll never remember. And I think Jennifer Hart wasn't the first. She was just the first time someone noticed.
My name's Alex Morrison, and until 3 months ago, I worked at Heritage Antiques, a small shop in the historic district. I loved that job. The quiet afternoons, the fascinating items that came through, the stories behind century-old furniture and forgotten heirlooms. Then something appeared in the shop that changed everything, something that shouldn't exist. It was a Thursday evening, late October. We'd been slow all day because of heavy rain. Around 7:30 p.m., my boss, Mr. Pemberton, told me I could start closing procedures and head home early once I finished sweeping. I was in the back room putting away cleaning supplies when I heard the front door chime. I called out a greeting, but no one answered. When I walked to the front, the shop was empty, except for the painting. It was leaning against the wall beside the checkout counter, as if someone had just set it down. The frame was old oak, beautifully preserved, and the painting itself was stunning. A stone well surrounded by autumn trees, their leaves painted in rich golds and deep reds. The detail was incredible. I could see individual stones in the well's construction, each leaf rendered with careful attention. There was no signature, no price tag, no intake form. I called Mr. Pemberton. "Did someone drop off a painting today? A well in the woods?" "A what? No, I haven't taken in any paintings this week. What are you talking about?" I described it to him. He sounded puzzled, but said he'd look at it in the morning. I should just lock up and go home. But I couldn't stop looking at the painting. The longer I stared at it, the more I wanted it. It was like a physical need, an itch I couldn't scratch. The idea of leaving it in the shop overnight felt wrong, almost painful. I took a photo of it, texted Mr. Pemberton asking if I could buy it, he responded almost immediately, "Sure, take it. Consider it a bonus. No idea where it came from anyway." I carried the painting home through the rain, holding it carefully under my jacket. My apartment was only 10 minutes away, but it felt like the longest walk of my life. I needed to get the painting home. I needed to hang it on my wall. I needed to look at it. These thoughts didn't feel entirely like my own. I hung it in my living room, right across from the couch where I could see it clearly. Then I sat down with a beer and just looked at it. The well was ancient, maybe medieval. The stones were dark with age, and something about the opening seemed deeper than it should be. The trees surrounding it were bare-branched despite the autumn leaves on the ground, as if they died standing. I must have dozed off on the couch, because the next thing I knew, I was waking up in darkness with a splitting headache. The TV had turned off automatically. The only light came from the street lamp outside my window. And I heard whispering, soft, feminine, coming from somewhere in the apartment. I stood up, pulse racing, and checked the bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen. Nothing. The whispering continued, clearer now, coming from the living room, coming from the painting. I approached it slowly, my rational mind screaming that this was impossible, even as my eyes confirmed what I was seeing. There was a figure in the painting that hadn't been there before. A woman in a white dress sitting on the edge of the well. As I watched, frozen in place, she turned her head and looked directly at me. Her lips moved, forming words I could almost understand. She beckoned with one pale hand. Then she stood and walked toward me, walked through the painted landscape, getting larger as she approached the front of the canvas, as if she were walking down a hallway toward a doorway. I stumbled backwards, my heart hammering. The woman pressed against the inside of the canvas like it was a window. Her face was inches from mine, separated only by paint and varnish. Her still lips moved, whispering more urgently now, and I caught fragments. "Help me. Trapped. So long. Let me out." Her hand pushed against the canvas from the inside. I could see the surface bowing outward slightly, like fabric being pushed from behind. Then she grabbed my shirt collar. I felt her cold fingers close on the fabric, even though she was still inside the painting. The sensation was impossible. She was touching me from another dimension, another space that shouldn't exist. She pulled, and I felt myself being drawn forward, toward the canvas, toward that impossible interior space. I braced my hands against the wall on either side of the frame and pushed back with everything I had. The woman's grip was incredibly strong, far stronger than her delicate appearance suggested. I could feel the wall cracking under my palms as I pushed harder, my muscles screaming. Our faces were inches apart, separated by the thinnest membrane of reality. Up close, I could see that her eyes were wrong, too dark, like looking into empty wells. Her skin had a waxy, painted quality. Whatever she was, she'd never been human. My right hand slipped. I lurched forward, my forehead actually touching the canvas. In that instant of contact, I saw. The well wasn't empty. It was full of people, standing in the darkness below, their faces turned upward, in mouths open in silent screams. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, reaching up towards a small circle of light miles above them. I jerked back hard enough to tear my shirt collar. The fabric ripped free, and I fell backward onto the floor. The woman in the painting held the scrap of cloth, examining it with interest before looking at me with something like hunger. Then she smiled, a horrible predatory smile that showed too many teeth, and walked backward into the painting, returning to her place on the edge of the well. I sat on the floor for a long time, shaking. When I finally got up, I went straight to bed and locked the bedroom door, as if a door could protect me from whatever that thing was. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't stop thinking about the painting, but I was terrified to look at it. Finally, around noon, I forced myself to check on it. The autumn scene had changed. Where there had been warm fall colors, now the trees were bare and skeletal. The ground around the well was covered in frost. The entire painting had shifted from autumn to deep winter, as if months had passed overnight inside that frame. And the woman was gone from the well's edge. I searched the entire painted landscape, but she was nowhere to be seen. That should have been a relief. Instead, it filled me with dread. If she wasn't in the painting, where was she? I spent the day researching the painting online, using reverse image search, checking art databases, scrolling through endless galleries. Nothing. It was as if the painting had never existed before appearing in my shop. That night, I forced myself to sit in the living room and face it. I needed to understand what was happening. I poured myself a whiskey, then another, trying to calm my nerves while I stared at that winter landscape. Around midnight, I started to feel drowsy. The whispering returned, softer this time, almost soothing. My eyes grew heavy. The last thing I remember thinking was that I should go to bed, but I couldn't make my body move. When awareness returned, I was no longer in my apartment. I was standing in the painting. The transition was seamless, one moment sitting on my couch, the next standing on frozen ground surrounded by dead trees. The well loomed in front of me, its dark opening like a mouth waiting to swallow me. The cold was intense, biting through my clothes. My breath came out in white plumes. Everything had the slightly unreal quality of a dream, but the sensations were too vivid. The crunch of frost under my feet, the smell of dead leaves, and something else, something rotten. "Hello, Alex." I spun around. The woman in white stood behind me, but now I could see her clearly. Her dress was tattered and stained, her hair hung in wet tangles, her skin had a blue-gray tinge, like someone who'd been in cold water too long. "You're trapped here now," she said, her voice echoing strangely. "Just like I was, just like all of us." "What are you talking about? Let me out." She shook her head slowly. "I can't. That's not how it works. The painting chooses. It calls to people, makes them want it, makes them take it home. Then it feeds." "Feeds on what?" "Time, life, reality." She gestured at the well. "Look, everyone who's owned this painting ends up here eventually." I didn't want to, but I found myself walking towards the well. When I looked down into its depths, I saw them, dozens of figures standing in the darkness below, looking up at me with empty eyes. They were all dressed in clothes from different eras: Victorian dresses, 1920s suits, 1950s casual wear, modern jeans and t-shirts. All previous owners of the painting, all trapped. "How long?" I whispered. "Time doesn't work the same way in here. For you, it's been one night. For me, it's been..." She paused, calculating. 73 years. I bought this painting in 1950. I was 22 years old. I looked at her again. She still appeared to be in her early 20s, preserved in whatever hell this was. "There has to be a way out." "There is," she said, "but it requires sacrifice." Before I could ask what she meant, I felt hands on my back, cold, impossibly strong hands. The woman